Welcome to Perspectives in Mobile, the news podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Join us discussing the world of telecommunications, technology, and mobile innovations. From Florence, Riccardo Amati.
Trust in digital communication is under pressure. Citizens today face an unprecedented wave of spam, scams, misinformation, and fragmented digital experiences. At the same time, governments are being asked to deliver secure, trusted, and effective communication at population scale, often in moments when reliability matters most. And as digital identity, verified messaging, and omni-channel communication move to the center of public life, a key question emerges for telcos, CPaaS providers, messaging platforms, and app developers. What can the private sector learn from governments communicating with millions of people every day? Hello, and welcome to MEF Perspectives, the podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. I'm Riccardo Amati, and today's guest is Janak Joshi, Chief Digital Officer for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, one of the leading voices in digital transformation in government. Thank you for joining, Janak.
Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Janak helps in shaping how public institutions use digital and mobile technologies to improve citizen experience, service delivery, and trust. In this conversation, we will explore how governments are modernizing citizen communications, what trusted engagement really means at scale, and why lessons from the public sector may increasingly, be useful for the mobile ecosystem, the broader mobile ecosystem, for all the ingredients of the ecosystem. Janak, when we speak about trusted digital engagement in government, what does that actually mean in practice?
In today's day and age, trust has become one of the primary focus and actually a core competency that distinguishes how organizations, including the government, if you think of it as an organization, kind of create a level of confidence amongst our customers, which are the citizens. So trust, as defined by governments operating at the federal level, at the regional level, at the state level, however you call it, is incredibly important. Trust in terms of the content and the message, trust in terms of verifiable and validated information, trust as defined by who and where the information is coming from, and trust as defined by when and where the information is being distributed is really how we look at it and the lens with which we communicate to the citizens, which means there's a tremendous amount of focus on content, identity management, and validation.
Right, trust is the magic word for the governmental and the private communication at this level. Citizens, anyway, are overwhelmed by spam, scams, fragmented communication. So how do governments maintain credibility and ensure trust? Ensure that citizens trust the messages they receive?
I think, there is a tactical answer and there is a strategic answer to that. The strategic answer is that we spend tremendous amount of time curating and managing the content at the messaging level. For example, before any messages go out to our B2C modalities, which could be messaging platforms, emails, on the website, on chatbots, etc., there are multiple layers of teams, committees, and validation experts that look at the content and make sure that all the domains are whitelisted and all the emails are scrubbed, that there has been a very thorough privacy and a PHI review, and that we are not collecting information or asking citizens for information if there is bidirectionality involved in the messaging associated with our communication protocols. Number one. And number two, the tactical response is that the vendors that we work with the architecture frameworks that we use and the type of communications that we send out are actually certified, validated, and structured in a way that minimizes any potential security incidents or any potential privacy concerns at the state level as well as at the federal level, and even sometimes at the international level, because we cannot deal with platforms, or we cannot have breaches that would severely compromise the trust in our citizens, because that's the only thing that we have amongst all the noise in the technology that we that's present today.
So we are talking about multiple channels, millions of citizens. What can the private sector learn from this scale of engagement?
I would say that before any organization scales up engagement at the B2B or the B2C level, some of the biggest lessons we learn is really understanding the longevity and the validation associated with the content that's being distributed across the modalities. Many companies today don't actually possess end-to-end solution for anything that they're doing, which essentially means that you absolutely need to get into a third-party review. Some of the vendors like AWS, like GCP, have a very deep, vertically and horizontally deep vendor ecosystem. And each one of these vendors actually contribute to the entire workflow, which means they're doing an end-to-end workflow review before you get and commit to any broad distribution, communication, functional, transactional, etc., is absolutely critical path. Number one. And number two, I would say that really understand your ROI metrics. What is the cost attributed to this messaging? Just because you sprinkle some AI software in it doesn't make it sustainable. We have found that sometimes a traditional method of sending an email out or sending a text message out is far more compelling than having an email reviewed, developed by an AI bot or an AI protocol. So I would say that the cost factor and the distribution mechanism based on regulatory compliance, protocol compliance, standards compliance becomes absolutely important. So having human in the loop attributed to broad-based communications is absolutely critical path for us.
And that's how you decide which channels to prioritize: SMS, apps, portals, email, conversational AI, which is the new thing. And the question is, how important is mobile in that mix? The adjective mobile.
Yeah. So the mobile comms is where majority of our traffic comes from. People are checking their phones constantly. People are checking their messaging constantly, etc. So yes, we do work with vendors such as Twilio, for example, or we use native messaging protocols from Microsoft sometimes. But the reality is that the mobile ecosystem is really the primary and the majority representative modality for the citizens across demographics. This is not just for the younger demographic. Nobody's sitting on their laptops checking emails constantly, but people are on their phones, which means that the messaging via MMS, RCS becomes very, very important for us. Yes, we have a chatbot. It's a virtual chatbot on mass.gov, but it's still a web-based application, which means you need to launch the browser, you need to type in mass.gov, and you need to invoke the chatbot on mass.gov, and which works all the time. But I would say if I look at the future, I think messaging becomes absolutely critical path for communication.
You're describing government communication as a mobile first environment at the moment.
And I would also say that the mobile first is by proxy and by default critical path for us and for a variety of other application protocols too. Because even when we see citizens come to our website to engage with different agencies, there is a very large percentage of traffic that directly is attributed to mobile phones.
You were mentioning RCS, richer messaging. Do you think is it a good asset for trust? Could it be important to ensure? And do you think that having the possibility to show video and many things in a message can improve trust in the audience, or vice versa? It just complicates things.
No, I think it's very important. I think increasing communications through rich text, whether it's video, animated GIFs, pictures, audio files, and even reference files to videos that are sitting on a authenticated domain URL that's controlled by the institution, are all very, very important. Of course, it's a loaded question, because even if you invoke a video, how do you ensure that there isn't an IP takeover or a messaging takeover with some
That's
fake
true.
messages at the back end? We are thinking about a lot of those technologies. They haven't yet been implemented, which means that we need to approach a lot of this with real caution.
Sure.
We have seen this across social media channels, that it's very easy to morph expressions, human faces, etc. And so the security and the authenticity associated with every message that we send out is going to be of utmost importance and
Correct.
absolute.
You know what? I mean, the first thing that one noticed talking to when you think about governments, you were thinking about notifications from the governments, and now we are talking about messaging, which is very different, isn't it? And do you think that is that evolving into something closer to public infrastructure? I mean, how is it part today of the infrastructure of the government? How it becomes, part of it, not just a notification, but an exchange.
Yeah. So we launched the chatbot about 6 months ago. Mass.gov already had a chatbot actually for 5 or 6 years, but it was based on NLP technology. But we launched it on an LLM based technology, and since then our engagement has increasingly become very personal. People are very satisfied with human-like conversations, to be honest, and increasingly our depth and complexity of questions that we can answer is improving, and it's miles ahead of where it used to be. So instead of citizens calling for simple things like password resets or forgotten passwords or account expirations, etc., now we're being engaged in really complex discussions around tax codes, tax burdens, starting businesses, and you couple that with multi-agency transactions, wherein we have multiple agencies interacting with each other, servicing a single question. That is cutting edge. And I think that's really, really leading in the government.
How important is customer experience at this point? I mean, the public, the audience has grown accustomed to, communication from banks, retailers, digital platforms. So is that becoming important for governments as well, just as it is for enterprise CX?
100%, absolutely. I came from the world of healthcare and healthcare services, and personalizing healthcare services for patients was always at the top of my agenda. Similarly, at the government level, I mean, this is not, I'm not singling Massachusetts out, but also across other states. I've seen this in Florida, California, New York, Illinois, Texas, Connecticut, that there is increasing focus on end-to-end constituent experiences. The seamless experience that moves from agency A to agency B to agency C, to service a constituent across a single question or a single solution is of utmost importance. Each one of these states I have seen and their teams have a lot of customer experience and user experience design teams. And we literally have maps that are crossing agency boundaries to say, hey, if I'm trying to start a business, what will be my tax burden? Well, that comes from Department of Revenue. And who assigns a tax ID number, and what kind of tax credits I'll get, what kind of land credits I'll get, and how do I find a lawyer? How do I find an ecosystem within my vertical domain, whether somebody's starting a trucking business or a software business, etc. So I think the increasing importance on constituent focus is very important going forward. Very, very important. And that's almost a forcing function of creating that level of trust within the government.
Are governments moving toward a more proactive, event-driven model of engagement rather than waiting for citizens to initiate negotiations? I mean, again, it's a parallel with private companies, isn't it? At the end of the day,
it is. I think the old event-driven architecture sitting on an enterprise service bus on a reference architecture that kind of predicts an event that's about to happen. I think we are a few years away from that, to be honest.
Right.
Because it's not the confidence level in the technologies, but it's just that a lot of the information that the government gives out is very semantic in nature. And agentic models foundationally are more kind of probabilistic, which means that if you combine semantic data assets with a probabilistic model, you have a very long list of false positives and false negatives, which means that unless we have the level of confidence in the models becoming more deterministic, and until we kind of address the semantic nature of all the underlying reference content for our messaging use cases, it's still going to involve human in the loop, and it's still not going to be kind of predicting some of the needs. Now, there are very simple baseline use cases saying that, hey, if I'm starting a business, using that, expanding on that analogy, I already know that you are going to need access to 2-3 different things. You will need to fill out a certain forms. Sure, we can do that. But to predict things like, hey, your tax burden on a C corp versus an LLC based on
what I thought when I was asking the question. Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a question of semantic. It's a question of it's a conversation. So semantic is important, of course. Words are at the end of the day the means here. Trust, fraud, and secure messaging. Fraud prevention and sender trust are major issues for the mobile ecosystem. What lessons can messaging providers and telcos learn from government approaches to trusted communications, if ever?
Yeah, so we're focusing a lot on vendors that are able to provide us with better and deeper observability, better audit trails, better ability to kind of understand who's the actual subscriber and the dependence across each one of these numbers that we have access to. So name number identification, for example, it's something that I've talked about in the sense that is my cell phone really correlated to me, or is it somebody else in my family? That is very, very important, because the last thing you want to do is send the wrong message to the wrong person, even if it's the right message overall. So name number identification is very important. So when you think about things like ID verification at the carrier level, it's very important to see that who is the line attached to. And the last thing I would say is validating the authenticity before a message goes out, double checking it, triple checking it is of absolute high importance for us. So understanding what are the security protocols for the message in transit, what are the security protocols for the message that is at rest, etc. Very, very critical path for us.
Right. Verified sender identity. This is probably the main thing.
Yeah.
And about anti-phishing systems, what could do in the future of digital engagement from the government point of view? What
Yeah.
could
So
play?
the anti-phishing is, you know, is beginning to emerge as a huge challenge, not only for governments, but especially for corporations. The agentic models using phishing campaigns are getting increasingly sophisticated. They can spoof all the way up to your email domain and you wouldn't even know. So I would say that really pay attention to whitelisting the content and for approving the content and reviewing the content across use cases, almost like having a campaign library or a campaign inventory before anything gets launched. And I
Mm,
think those companies, third-party vendors, service providers, even some of the industry organizations that maintain a campaign inventory or a use case inventory, uh, have suddenly become very important because
mm,
everybody's going to ask a question. It's like, where did the campaign come from? Who owns the campaign? How long is the campaign going to last? How
sure.
many, what are the what are the launch configs across the campaign? How many people are going to see it? Where are they going to see it, etc. A lot of those questions become very important from a phishing perspective, and also for constituent education at the end of the day. And I really think that educating consumers about how you distinguish between a true message versus a fake message is absolutely important, especially for the older cohort of constituents, I would say.
Mm. How do you balance convenience and personalization with privacy and accountability?
Yeah. So the government is not generally, I mean, this is a personal opinion, the government generally is not in the business of commercializing data. The government is also not in the business of using the data to promote anything. We're in the business of protecting and improving your experiences across all interactions with the government, and also educating the constituents about their rights and responsibilities with the data. So the intention here is to collect as little information as possible, but provide the most relevant information from the questions that you're asking. So,
Re-
I'm a technologist, so I truly believe that coming up with a semantic model from all the questions and all the interactions across call centers that we've learned in the past, and establishing some form of a graph database that allows us to not, predict is a very strong word, but to at
Mhm,
least assess
mhm.
where your questions are going or what you might do with some of this information is going to be very important in the future. So I would say that the personalization cannot be at a level where I know everything, including your PHI and PII. I think
Mm,
that's necessary, to be
mhm.
honest. But predicting, saying that, hey, you might need this in the future, please take care of it, or you might really want to pay attention to X, Y, and
I
Z,
see.
is going to be important.
I see. Um, Crisis, emergencies. That's where government, has the biggest test. What makes mobile messaging truly effective in these moments?
Um, I would say three very concrete things. The penetration rate of mobile devices in large urban areas like Boston, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Miami, etc., is upwards of 75 to 80%, to be honest. And this includes prepaid phones, burner phones, and even contracted subscriber lines. So when you're talking about 70, 80, and in some cases like 90% in certain regional areas, penetration rate, I think for any emergencies, mobile phones becomes absolutely critical path. But you're also, my observation also has been that we have had a, um, we are observing an increasing number of landlines no longer in commission, and people no longer using landlines even in large urban
Mhm.
areas, uh, which means that your mobile phone is your primary phone at the end of the day, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it.
Mm. If you had to choose just one lesson the mobile ecosystem should learn from government digital transformation, what would it be? In a word, really, in a line.
I think one of the biggest lessons in the mobile ecosystem is the assumption that the person that you're talking to is the actual intended audience.
Right.
That is by far one of the biggest challenges. So verifying an identity of the intended audience is going to be increasingly important, and not just from a regulatory and compliance perspective, but also from the effectiveness in establishing attribution models. Right? I mean, in e-commerce, etc., everybody talks about attribution rates, etc. Government does not talk about attribution, but it at least talks about what was the intended outcome and how far are we from the outcome that we were expecting from the communication that was sent out. So I think that's the number one concern for everybody out there. Now, it really depends on who you speak with. If you talk to a chief security officer or somebody responsible for content and communications, they would all have different responses, but all the responses kind of zone into that, saying that we sent out an email or a text message or an RCS message to 20 million people. How many people actually read it? And did a large percentage of people take action or understood behind the intended message? I think that's very, very important.
Identify your target, the audience that you want to talk to.
Yeah.
Janak Joshi, Chief Digital Officer for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Janak, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing such valuable insights on what trusted digital engagement looks like at scale. Thank you, Janak.
Very much.
For the MEF community, there are lessons in how governments are approaching digital communication in a complex and fraud-prone environment. Thank you for listening to MEF Perspectives. And Riccardo Amati, goodbye for now, and good luck with your work.
Thanks for listening to Perspectives in Mobile. Join us next as we explore telecoms, technology, and mobile innovations. Stay tuned, stay connected, and let's unlock the mobile potential together.